It's Brenda Meller with Meller Marketing. Happy New Year! This is my first LinkedIn Live broadcast for 2021. And Dawn, I am so delighted to have you on. Dawn, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Brenda. I'm so happy to be here, and thank you for letting me kick off the new year with you.
Yeah, it's great. It's kind of like crazy to think about. We're finally in 2021 because we've been talking about this all through 2020. We just need to get through this year, right? And here we are already. So it's great to have you as the kickoff guest for the year.
Thanks. I love going first.
Yeah. There you go. Awesome. Well, hey, I just want to welcome all of those who are watching us. We're going live right now on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And if you guys have been watching my broadcast for a while, you know that I'm always learning as I go. I never make mistakes, right? I have learning experiences. And if you follow my show, you know I always go live 5 after the hour. So if I book Dawn for 11, we always go live at 11:05. And one thing I noticed is that sometimes people are like messaging me, I can't find the link. Well, that's because they went on LinkedIn at 11:04, probably looking for it. And the live stream actually takes about 30 seconds, Dawn, from the time that we start talking to the time people can see it. And then if they leave a comment, it takes a little bit more time. So I'm going to put the ticker up on the screen right now and just remind people, if you are watching, hey, I want you to leave me a comment below. Leave a comment so Dawn and I know that you're watching. And just, in your comment, how's 2021 going so far for you? I mean, we're 7 days in, right, Dawn? We got a week under our belt at this point. Yep. So
it's going to go fast.
It will. And before we know it, we're going to be at the end of the month and we're going to be in February and the year's going to go by faster and faster. So if you guys could drop us a comment below, that way we know who's watching. And if you're watching this on your desktop or laptop, here's what I would recommend. Pull up the LinkedIn on your phone and find the activity stream on your phone. That way you can leave comments here in the live stream on your phone and the stream will keep going on your laptop. So that's my little hack, my little workaround, if you will, to keep the stream going. And as you start to drop your comments in, I'll pull them on screen as we start to kick off and introduce ourselves. So you guys know me. I want to introduce Dawn. And Dawn, you and I have known each other for a while. And we did a little prep call earlier in the week. And I was saying, I feel like I've known you. Like, when did we meet? Was it in forum? Was it like, do you remember? Do you want to share with people where we met?
Well, I think, as you said, it's been a large part within forum. But the pivotal moment for me was when you did the LinkedIn-a-thon back in May of 2019. And you did it at the American Cancer Society in Southfield. I remember you raising money to support a very good cause in memory of your mom. And you had all these great speakers, like Terry Beam came in. There were several other people that just came in and spoke about LinkedIn. And it literally changed my life. And I remember you said one thing to me in the class. You said, you challenged everybody in the room. And you said, when you leave today, I want you to make a post about tips that you learned from the day. And I remember I had posted one and I put the tips in the comments like you suggested. And you wrote back and you said, out of all the people that were in the room, you're the only one that actually followed the instructions. So I've been a big fan and champion out there. And as you and I were talking in the prep call, there's so many people that reach out to me and they're like, oh, can you help me with LinkedIn? I'm like, no, but Brenda Meller can. Here's some information. Go follow some of her videos, watch what she's doing, get involved in her groups. Like, I know what my space is. And I've learned a lot from you. And I can't thank you enough for all that you've done for our community and for all the job seekers out there. And I get a lot of people that come to me either because they've started with you or they're ending up with you. So I think that's how our worlds have really intersected and we just don't know how many people we're touching. So.
Yeah. And it's for me, I feel like we swirl around each other all the time. And I feel like where I go to different places, I'm like, oh, Dawn's there. And I feel like you start to see the same people in the room all the time. You're like, oh, good, I'm in the right place. Like Dawn's here, Yeah. For me, it's like, I can't quite place where. I just feel like you've been everywhere all the time, like you've been a part of the groups and the discussions, and I've gotten referrals from you, and somebody actually was on my show and I'm blanking on the name right now. Do you remember who it was? And she said, you got to invite Dawn. And I was like, oh, of course. Do you remember who it was?
Mary Parker. She was just on before the end of the year. And I know when Nancy Maurer was on with you, I think in October, November, I think she also had mentioned something about it. So,
So a lot of the same people. So I'm so delighted to have you. And I just dropped a little comment tagging Terry Bean. So maybe he'll get a notification that we're talking about him here on the show.
I won the piece of pie that you had when Terry did his section. So it was really memorable for me.
Oh, that was nice. So you got a nice connection with Terry in there too. Yeah. So for those of you, if you watch me, you know that I love pie. Like, pie is my thing. And I actually got a little I should take it off. I got a little pie necklace from somebody from my job seeker group is making jewelry. And I said, can you make me a pie necklace? I'll take a picture and I'll post it later, but it says social media pie, which is the name of my book. And there's this little pie charm that's a part of it. So back in the pre-COVID days, when I would present, I would bring a pie to give away. In the LinkedIn-a-thon, I bought slices of pie from Grand Traverse Pie. And after every speaker, we pulled names out of a hat and I gave away a free slice of pie. So nice little connection. There's a little bonus too when you go to a presentation winning something, right?
Yeah, that's how Terry will only remember me.
right.
From the pie he gave me.
So enough about us. Well, actually, I want to get into a little bit deeper about Dawn as we kick off our conversation here about starting off the new year. And Dawn, what I'd like to do is give you the floor for a few minutes. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what your business is all about, if you could.
Sure. So I think as most of people know, or if not, my name is Dawn Poteau. I started my organization called Talent Activators in 2020. And I was one of those individuals that I thought I was going to go back into a corporate job. I've had many wonderful roles in organizations here in Southeast Michigan, leading the talent management and leadership development function in some large companies like Chrysler, for instance. And it was really that catapulted me into a lot of opportunities to work with leaders. And I also had the opportunity to be in an entrepreneurial setting from, 2017 to the end of 2019, and working for the owner of 5 Hour Energy, Manoj Bhargava. And I got to do some really amazing things in medical, healthcare, and pharmaceutical with some smaller companies. And I got to bring a medical device back to the United States, which was really interesting and fun for me. Somebody that grew up managing teams and primarily in like the HR and performance support type functions, to really lead a project like that was great. So that took me on the journey of where was I going to go and what was I going to do next. I thought I'd end up in a corporate job. And then as life would have it, I found myself wanting to start my own business and do coaching and consulting in organizations. So my niche is really focused on helping leaders make successful transitions into new roles. I do help individuals that are thinking about what's next, but my primary focus is once they've landed. So been able to do that with a couple hundred leaders when I was at Chrysler doing leader assimilations and helping them through that journey in that first 6 months, which is really critical. I recently had posted on LinkedIn a message that the corporate executive board had posted that said between 50 and 70% of executives fail in the first 18 months.
Wow. What was that percentage again?
What's that?
What was that percentage again?
It is between 50 and 70% of executives fail in the first 18 months.
Wow.
And when you think about the cost that an organization entails, especially when you're hiring at the senior levels in an organization, they say that it takes 18 months to recoup the cost of bringing somebody into the organization. So if you're turning people over within that first 18 months, the company is really going to be suffering more than just the financial implications, but the team, everything happens around that. So it's really important that people get set up for success. And I feel like I have some success for myself and for some people that I've worked with to really help guide and shape that as they enter into new roles.
Awesome. And as you guys can see, the topics kind of right above us here, we're talking about new year, new start, how to successfully transfer into a new role in 2021. So whether you're watching this live or watching this playback, I want you guys to join the conversation. And any channel you're watching on, you can drop a comment below. If you have any questions for Dawn, you can ask them as we're going throughout. But let's kind of start this conversation here, Dawn. So, it's the beginning of a new year. There's probably some people that are watching this that are starting a new job, maybe this month, maybe at the end of this month, next month. They're going to be in a leadership role. So what advice do you have for them as they get started in their positions?
Yeah. So I have a process that, I share with the individuals I work with, but I'll share it with our audience today. So if anybody has a piece of paper and a pen, I'm going to have you write down little steps and some tips that will go in it. So I call it my 90-day plans, and it's got an S on the end of it because it's a 5-step process.
Okay.
So I'll walk through the steps with everybody, but the first stage is prepare. And that really begins with preparing before you start the job with all of the things that you think you might need or want or need to know about the organization. Certainly when, people have been through the interview process, your mind is probably churning. And especially, I know a lot of people that have reached out to me recently, they've been, I'll call it limbo for a few months, and they haven't really thought about, it was all about getting the job. They haven't thought about what's next.
Right.
So I really encourage people to think about what's the information that you need to know now that you've accepted the position before you start, because in most cases you've got a week or so beforehand. And one suggestion I would have, because all of the people out there that have been actively searching, you probably haven't taken time to really just decompress before you walk into the job. So part of prepare, the first step, is to think about taking a little bit of time for yourself, but also writing down notes about what you need to have. So that could include, an org chart. You may not have received an organizational chart as the interview process was going on. So can you request that from the person that you're, onboarding with? Can you get any information about the budget? I had situations where I really wasn't great at asking some of those questions up front, and I was leading a team and found out that there really wasn't a budget to support the activities I was ultimately going to be responsible for. So it's really important to have some of that and know your structure. Unbeknownst to me, and there was open position that was needing to be filled in one of the organizations I started in. And that was like the very first thing they wanted me to do, but I had not done an assessment of the team, which we'll talk about in a second. So as much as you can, prepare, look at the the company information, look at the sustainability report. I was talking with somebody recently about that this week. There's information about people and processes in organizations that are in corporate sustainability reports that most people just overlook. All of the news media, the investor relations, pull down, their 10K and look at the information about where the company is financially, if you did not do that as part of your interview process. So that
you would hope like a smart leader would be doing their due diligence on the company, right, before coming in. But if you haven't, okay, you got the job, so now you need to kind of backfill on that stuff, right?
Yep. So the P in plans is for prepare. The next one is listen. And that for me is really, once you get into the organization, it's going to be important for you to have those listening conversations. That includes your team and key stakeholders that you're going to be interfacing with. So, a suggestion, and it's really one of my go-to guides, and I learned a lot of this myself on my own, was The First 90 Days by Michael Watkins. It's a great book, and he has all kinds of ideas and checklists that you can glean from, but he has, 5 questions that he recommends leaders use in one-on-one conversations with their teams. But you need to be doing the same thing with your stakeholders. Your teams, when you walk into a new role, especially if you're, coming in from the outside, but I think it applies for a lot of leaders I used to work with that had moved laterally or gotten promotions in an organization or moved into a different department. They didn't always know who the key stakeholders were, or they made some assumptions. A great exercise is to sit down with your team early on and ask them to help you identify who the stakeholders are. And then one of the things I do with a lot of my clients is help them walk through that process and put a communication plan together. So listen is the second step, and making sure that you're doing that at first. Stop talking, just listen to what people are saying, and you'll start to glean some really great themes. So then after you do that, it's the next step for me is really around activity, and it's identifying what Michael Watkins would refer to as some early wins. So how can you find those early wins in that first, 90 days to 6 months, not where you're running around and trying to change the world, because you have to go back to listen first, but finding out those opportunities where you can really have some good activity and some early wins for you and for your team, and making sure you're recognizing the team's contributions in that process. The next stage gets to the team, and I use the N, which is for needs assessment. So you really need to assess your team. What is it, what are their strengths? There's another book, Good to Great by John Collins. It talks about, getting the right people on the right seats on the bus. And it's really making sure that you have the right players in the right seats. Another conversation I had, recently with someone is they understand that there's a big skill gap that they might be walking into with their team. And, before you walk in the door, you can't really assess that. So you're going to need to take some time in those first, couple of months to really sit down with your team, understand their performance. How have they been rated in the past? What are their development opportunities, and what do they want to be working on? And I found, in my other positions that a lot of leaders struggled with putting development plans together. And they overlook the possibility of sitting down with the team member and saying, what would you like to do? How do you think you could best develop these skills? And having the employees actually own their development plan. And the role of the leader is to really remove roadblocks and obstacles for them to be able to effectively get that done. So I think you have to assess the team, make sure you've got the right players. It may be a great opportunity to move some people around because they may have been blocked before by their previous leader. Somebody might have been, getting ready to exit the organization. Maybe it was a retirement. Maybe they moved into a different position and hadn't thought about the development the way that you might enter into it. So it's a great situation. The last step in plans is around strategy. It's going to be really important that you put a strategy and a plan together. Your leadership is going to be looking for that from you. After you come into the role, they're going to say, okay, it's been 90 days. What's your plan? What's your strategy? So when you think back to the early stages, when you are preparing for the job, you need to know what the goals and objectives are and how have they been measuring performance to date? What are they expecting you to do from a strategic perspective in that new role? So those are the steps. So really it's around prepare, listen. You want to be having some activity and opportunities for yourself and your team, doing the needs analysis, and then the strategy. So those are the 5 steps in the process.
Good. And I was typing this out as you went along, Dawn, and I was like, I think she said plan, but you said plans with an S. So I had to guess. Hopefully I got everything. And there's not a way in StreamYard. If anyone else is a StreamYard user, you'll know I'm keep us in this position here. You'll know that there's some limitations, and then they're always rolling out different enhancements and things like that. But I have like these banners where you can type things in, but I can't force a line break. So if it were me, like as a marketer, I would have like put plan to the next bulleted list and like bullet them underneath. But I did the best with what I could, Dawn. I thought I did things up. Very good. So these are things, is this like a 90-day process? Is this the first 30 days? What's the time frame that you recommend for new leaders coming into a new role in the new year?
It's really going to take them a good 90 days to get through this. A lot of clients I work with, it's for a 6-month journey. We may be having a concentrated effort in the first 90 days and then backing it off a little bit into that 6 months. But, generally speaking, it's going to take you 6 months to really get settled and get things figured out. And I know myself, I'm, I guess you'd call me that type A personality. Like I came in, I really wanted to get a lot of things accomplished.
Right.
I think that was a challenge. Even as a business owner, I had very high expectations for myself and, moving things forward. So I think you have to kind of slow down a little bit. There's this, especially, again, I've talked to a lot of people that have maybe had a 6-month or greater absence from when they, lost their last position and now they're going into a new one, because of what happened in 2020. But for a lot of people, they want to jump in and they want to jump in fast and hard. And you have to be so careful because you could really damage relationships with the team and with your stakeholders if you come in too quick. But at the same time, you've got to manage those expectations that your boss is going to have on you. And particularly for the people I'm working with are usually senior leaders in an organization, the C-suite is looking at them. So you have to be really careful and manage expectations of those stakeholders. They may not give you 6 months, but you've got to make some really great headway, in those first 3, but first and foremost in that first month, listen. You need to be listening more than talking.
Mm-hmm. And it's almost like there's a careful balance to what I'm hearing you say, Dawn, too. Like you've got to prove yourself. What did they hired you? So did they get what they paid for? Right. Are they getting the type of leader that you proposed to be in the job interviews and what you said you would bring to the table? So you need to be delivering on that, but you also want to do so strategically. And that was a word I heard you say too. In that you want to build trust with the team. You want to, because I think the time period that you're first coming in, you're trying to prove to both the people that report to you and that you report to, that you're good at what you do and that you are a good addition to the team, right?
Yeah, I recently told one of my clients, we were talking and, certainly there was a lot of excitement about the role and what she was looking to do. And I said, I would encourage you as much as possible when you start a question, start with, I'm curious. Oh. And I think it's a great tip for any situation, but start with, I'm curious, instead of what's going on. Because a lot of people are, why is that? I think it's just starting it off with being curious And it's not just to say the statement and not mean it, because you need to have the intention behind the question. So walking in and clearly, wanting to be curious about what's going on, how did, we arrive at these things, and not wanting to boil the ocean.
Right. Like starting too fast and too furious. And I feel like sometimes leaders come into a role and they say, hey, I'm going to make a big change quick so people know I'm serious. And I remember like TV shows where the director of the movie fires someone the first week because then everybody's scared of that person. Yeah. And they're not going to want to do wrong. So, you might be apt to say, I'm going to come in and make a big change, but you might make a change, and that was the wrong change to make. You acted too quickly. You took the wrong person out. To your earlier point, maybe that person could have been in a different seat on the bus, or maybe there was just some developmental plans that needed to be adjusted that could get the person to where you needed them to be. And they carry, a lot of times when you're making team changes, they carry a lot of legacy of information with them, right? And you're losing that when you're making those changes. So I think being strategic is a good part of that process.
Yeah, and I think as much as you can, like you said, Brenda, we don't always find this out in the interview process. I'm, again, thinking of people going into a new organization. We don't always know that there may be people like that the company is considering finding a new role for, either in or outside of the organization. And I think as much as you can, when you come in, you've got to really take some time with that and understand it, because what I found myself is a lot of times I would inherit projects and departments. This was, going back into my consulting days. I seem to be one of those leaders that would always get what we would call the problem children, where other managers just felt like they didn't know what to do with them. And then they'd say, well, give them to Dawn.
Oh, yeah.
And I think the reason that happened is because I would take the time to really get to know the person, understand their strengths and, the weaknesses, and what could we do to develop more. I'm more of a strength-based approach, but how can you take a person's strengths and leverage those to overcome the things that might be driving them, in that weakness category? So that was, I think it's as much as possible, really understanding, and it's okay. And I've done this, and I don't know that I'm thinking of one person in particular that I stayed in touch with, and she reached out to me because we were in one of those situations where she came into work and literally was crying literally every day and just miserable in the job. And I looked at her and I said, let's work on what you're going to do next. And it doesn't sound like it's going to be in this organization from what she was sharing with me. And I'm like, let's put a plan and a strategy to help you exit from the company, because it doesn't seem like we've been able to find things that are a good fit for you. And there's other factors affecting your ability to do that. And I can honestly say, Brenda, she's one of those people that reached out to me in the last couple of years and said, you changed my life, and thank you for having the courage to have that kind of a conversation with me.
So was this somebody who reported to you, or is this just a coworker?
No, it was somebody that reported on my team.
I want to just commend you, Dawn, because I think that's such a brave thing to do, and it's such a non-selfish thing. But I think it's also, you were acting in the best interest of the company, but you were being a human being. Let me just say that way. I mean, you were being a human being relating to another human being and helping them to get to where they needed to go, but in a gracious way, because you could have come in and just fired her and said, I'm not dealing with you. You got to go figure it out on your own. But it probably made the work situation better in the meantime as well, because she knew where she was going to be someplace different, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
No, and I appreciate you saying it. I think it's just one of those lessons that I learned along the way, that as much as possible, you need to be open and honest with people. And again, another client comes to mind that we were talking about, an individual that's been in the organization a really long time, but they're not keeping up with the pace of change. And I'll just say, like, more around technology, and they're working in like a social media type environment, and the person is really not bringing those creative juices. And, I just encourage the person, why don't you just have a conversation and find out where the individual is? Because a lot of times what I found in those situations is they were waiting for someone to have the conversation with them. They just didn't know how to come to the company and say, this isn't working for me anymore. And no one was willing to have the conversation to find out what might be a good fit for them. And a lot of times I was either able to bring those strengths out or find opportunities. And again, I was doing a lot of work in development. So I would work with managers when they had those situations to help find opportunities for other people, because it's an uncomfortable conversation. And, I did work with, and I don't know if Mary Parker's joining us today or not, but, Mary was, an engineer, and it was challenging sometimes to find the right fit, because I love engineers and I loved working with Mary, but there was a certain way that they would look at the world. And I always had to bring that other perspective, the soft side. But, sometimes it's just finding a different approach and trying something new. And I found a lot of times people were relieved when the conversation occurred.
Wow. That's a really good point of view too. And it's sometimes like the elephant in the room. We all know it, but nobody wants to say it. And, and then when you do, then it's just clearing the air and people can move on from the conversation. So another question I have is, 2020 and 2021, a little bit different, right, than the times that we have experienced in our lifetime. And we've got this pandemic, and there's an impact on the economy, and businesses have had to pivot and change and operate so much differently than we ever thought we needed to. And, there were some adjustments that happened last year. And unfortunately, some companies downsized, had to go out of business, merged, consolidated. And I think things are going to continue to change coming into the new year. So when we think about your 5-step process, and you had step 5 was or the focus area 5 was kind of thinking about strategy. Mm-hmm. So I'm just wondering, how important is it you might be interviewing and the business is in a certain place, and then you come into the role thinking that's where the business still is. Should you be having conversations with your leadership team as well about, has our strategy for the organization changed? I mean, how important is that to have in those first 90 days as well?
It's critical. I mean, as I think we can all attest to, things changed a lot, throughout the year. I think, there was a conversation I had with somebody yesterday that her leader said, well, will we be back to work in May? And they had put people on furlough. And then she just got notified Tuesday that she's on furlough to the end of March. So this has been going on a year. And she told her manager or leader at the time, this is going to be a year before we're back to work. She was more of a strategic, big thinker, versus her managers like trying to, give that positive message. No, we'll be back. Mm-hmm. So I think as much as possible, yes, to understand how the plans have changed. I think January is a great time to go into an organization and understand that, because most companies are on, a January through December plan. You might have people that have a different fiscal year, but you should be able to get the annual reports. They'll probably be coming out in, February for larger organizations, but they should have an understanding of the department goals, how they accomplished those goals to plan. And most companies are starting, if they didn't do, goal planning at the end of December, in December, they're mm-hmm. probably actively doing it right now. So it's a great time to walk in, because you get to be part of that and shaping it. So it's a great question to be asking, your organizations. And even if you're making a move internally, you might be managing a department that you weren't part of before, and understanding what were the goals and objectives, and how did we perform last year, and what's the expectation for this year.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, how the conversations we're having throughout the year, last year and this year. I mean, the conversations organizations were having last January, when COVID was just a whisper and it was still rumblings in the background. We didn't really know what the impact was going to be. And it probably wasn't on our SWOT analysis. We probably didn't think global pandemic was going to be something we had to think about, but now it is. It's out there. And the year rolled on and evolved the business the way that it did. And then going into 2021, I think the next phase too, Dawn, is probably like a conversation about, how is our business going to be impacted as we come out of the pandemic? What does that return to work process look like? And there even maybe leaders that are starting a job and they've never met their team members. I mean, this is an uncommon thing, right? But you may not have even met them over video. So what advice do you have for leaders about how to get those relationships started, how to have those initial conversations with new members of the team that report to you?
Well, you would think that is not the norm, but I can tell you, in my last 3 jobs, I didn't meet any of the people I would be working with, my peers.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of one job in particular that I walked into and had a team member and didn't realize that they were located in Canada. They were not actually in the United States.
Wow.
And working on some critical projects. And I also had to adjust my thinking a little bit, that you don't always have to be in the same location with somebody, but it was a new team member. And then I had a role to fill very quickly. So, you don't always know those things. You ask questions, but sometimes they don't know how far you're going to progress in the process and won't be able to tell you everything. So you walk in and get a lot of surprises. So I think, yes, it's critical to meet with your team. That's where I'll work really closely with the leaders, that I'm coaching to let's put together a questionnaire. Sometimes I may be part of that process for them to interview some of their folks. I want them to certainly have the one-on-one conversation and set those expectations. But I was also fortunate to facilitate a process called the leader assimilation, and did that with 200 leaders at Chrysler. And it was a phenomenal process. GE really coined it many years ago. We adopted it when I was at Chrysler, and it helped to really set that tone. And it's a series of 8 questions that I would take the team and the leader through. Initially, it was just with the team together for about 2 hours. I'd take them through those 8 questions. And this, again, was back when we were working face-to-face, and I would flip chart and fill a room with the answers to the questions. It's like, what do you already know about the leader? What would you like to know? What does the leader need to know about you? What are you most excited about with the leader in this role? So there's a series of those questions, and I would take the team through that without the leader present. And then after those 2 hours, I'd bring the leader back in. I've now adjusted to do it virtually, but we would then identify what those key themes are. And then I would have the leader do what I would call walk the walls. So they would literally walk through each one of those questions. And a silly example is like the first one, what do you already know about the leader? Well, they thought he grew up in Montana. And he's like, no, I've always lived in Michigan. Where'd you get Montana from?
Oh, really? Yeah.
And it was such a wonderful experience. I have one leader that I actually did 5 assimilations for her because she moved so quickly. And again, I was at Chrysler, in a direct role for 5 years. And every time she got moved, she would call me and say, 90 days from today, when are we doing my assimilation? Because she found such value in that process to getting up to speed quickly with her team and identifying some of those concerns that her team might have about her leadership and what she was expecting. And everybody got to hear the same message at the same time. So it was a great process.
That's interesting. And as you're talking about I can imagine the big flip charts. I can hear the sound of the paper being ripped, like on the dotted line. And then I can envision you, Dawn, walking around the room and pasting these giant flip chart papers on the walls of the boardroom or whatever. Yeah. But it seems like it's so surreal to think about. How long has it been since we've done that? Since we've been in a room and had those conversations with people. Now everything's on Zoom and GoTo meetings.
But there's great tools that I use now. I use, Jamboard, for instance, and I can do the exact same thing I did in a room with the team and with the leader and get through the same process and have great outcomes. We've all, as you do, we're all adjusting to this new world. And I think that there's a great way to do that because a lot of people, one person I talked to earlier in the week, she has a virtual job managing a team of 15, and she's going to be remote. And so are her team members. So people aren't going back also to the traditional workplace. So you have to figure out how to adapt to it. So I'll work with leaders to figure out, are they going to be going back in the office, or if they're not, how can we make sure they get the same outcomes from that?
Yeah. And adjusting our process. So you said Jamboard. Is that affiliated with Google? Is it Google Jamboard? Okay. Because I hadn't heard about it before. I'm going to drop the link into the bottom here so people can look up. Whoop, wrong one.
It's great for collaborating because you can have, if I took let's say that team of 15, I could give them access to the Jamboard. And while I'm asking questions, people could be putting the answers to the questions up, and then we can debrief it and go through it together. But, a lot of times, especially as we know with Zoom, people feel like we're tripping over each other and interrupting. So, and for other people that just might be, deep thinkers, they may need time to think of the response, but they want to make sure it gets put up there. So can I do a
Jamboard right now? Could I have people submit questions and they can put them into the Jamboard?
No? Yeah, you'd have to make sure the link would be in your comments and that you open Jamboard so that it is enabled for anyone with that link to use it. And then, yes, people could go in and do it. I think I saw Christine was on here earlier. Christine had participated with me in the HR hackathon in December, and we use that in our breakout rooms. And what's great as the facilitators, I can see people and all of their responses, and so can the rest of the group. So it's a great tool.
Okay, so I'm going to put this, I'm actually going to try this. I've never tried this tool out before. You're teaching me new things right now, Dawn. So I'm going to put it in the comment. If you're watching this on LinkedIn Live right now, I'm dropping a comment in here right now. That's this Google Jamboard link. You guys should be on your best behavior right now because I'm trusting you with this. But we're going to give this a try and see if this actually works out. And I can navigate out of here pretty quickly if we need to. But
yeah, there's sticky notes. You can import graphics into it. So
cool. But people can go in here and they can type something in.
Yep.
Like
if
I can
like the link, they'll start drawing.
So can I type too, or is it only
the text? Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm looking down a little bit at your screen. There's a text box on the left-hand menu bar. Down at the bottom. There's your sticky note. You can change the color of your sticky note and just type.
Okay. And you just type in the sticky note?
Yep. Just
hello. There you go. It is yellow.
And you can make it pink.
I can make it pink. My almost,
there you go.
Almost brand color there. Oh, that's very cool. So if you guys are watching this, you can collaborate with us right now on the Jamboard. How fun is this? Virtual Post-it notes. Love it. This is very cool. So this is Jamboard. All right. So we're going to start to kind of shift the conversation here, Dawn. And I want to invite people to, if you have a question or a comment, to comment below. And I'm going to start kind of looking and seeing who's on and what questions folks have. And we'll start to kind of go through that. I'll leave the Jamboard up and I'll see if you guys can do that. So we'll see what happens if we can get some notes and things like that out of there. And I did share, so let me make sure I did this right, Dawn. I did share, and it says get link restricted, only people added can open with this link. So if I copied that link and pasted that, anybody,
anyone with the link should be able to add it.
With the link, yeah. So this is actually pink. People are looking at this going, that's not yellow, that's pink. Well, now it's pink. There we go. So now it's collaborating on there. All right, so we'll wait and see if anybody contributes to the Jamboard as we go. But let's see what questions we have that are in here. A lot of activity. I see Kimberly. I see Jeff. I see Jack Jampel. Jack corrected me on his pronunciation. Thank you so much for doing that, Jack. Kathy McNamara is on with us. Pam Lippett, nice to see you. Andrea really likes your tip about the org chart. Is there a way people can find an org chart for organizations, Dawn? Any tips there? Or before they start the company, aside from asking direct, I mean, can we look on their website? Is it normally something that's not listed? What are your thoughts there?
Generally, they're not going to make that public because, again, it's going to have employee information on it. So it's generally something you'd have to ask your hiring manager or the recruiter that you're working with to see if they would make that available. A lot of the leaders I worked with had put information together before my start. I always did that with my team. You can always take people's names off, but it might have roles if you're concerned about that data being out before the person's actually signed to be an employee. So it's always worth asking. Worst they can say is no.
Yeah. Okay, good point. And Jamboard, it doesn't look like anybody's contributing, so maybe you guys can't find the link or are not able to. I'm not sure. Maybe one or both of the above. But people are, Christine saying she used it. Lynette haven't used it, and I haven't either, but I'm definitely going to earmark that and come back. Bookmark, I should say. I can't earmark it because it's not in a book, but I'll bookmark it and I'll come back to that later. Pam likes it there too. Yeah. So
I think a lot of people are using like Miro and things like that. I call Jamboard an intro before you go to Miro, because sometimes when you're running meetings, if you're in Miro, it's such an it's a great tool, but yet it takes so much time to get people used to it, where Jamboard can go really quick.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I like it. Very cool. And I like the virtual post-it notes. They're very cool too. So Kimberly just added a comment in here. We were talking about making having those tough conversations with people where maybe they aren't a good fit. They know they're not a good fit. The organization is not working out anymore. And she's saying, truly shows that you remember that you care and that you want to do the best for them too. And it sounds like in your case, Dawn, it's like you created a relationship with a person, a professional relationship that extended far beyond your employment situation there too.
Yeah, I think, it's that golden rule, right? Treat people the way you wish to be treated. So can't go wrong.
Awesome. So as we start to kind of wind down our conversation here today, Dawn, I'm going to pull up, let me just take this comment off of the screen here, because I'm going to pull up your website up on screen here, and you're at talentactivators.com. Is that right? Is this the right website here?
Yep.
And tell us a little bit, is there anything, if we were to navigate to your website right now, anything you want to kind of point out to people?
So if people are, going through transition and looking for help and support, you'll find it throughout my website where you can set up time. It goes directly to my calendar. So if you click on that, complimentary activation session, it'll take you right to that. There's a downloadable about looking at, your 7 I call them your superpowers. It's a fun little exercise, grab those papers, download it, and take some time to think about what you want to be doing next. And I do a couple of different webinars. They're all up on my LinkedIn page that are coming up in January. I'm doing one on the 20th. That's going to be a deeper dive into this exact conversation about new year, new role for people. And then I'm doing one on the 22nd that is called Accessing Your Niche. Done that for some of the Inforum groups, but I've gotten the request to expand it out. So it helps people really think about what they want to be doing, what really drives and motivates them and gets them excited around finding their purpose, which I just put a video out today about finding your purpose. So any things like that I'm working on. And then I also am going to be doing some work with HR leaders on helping, and for leaders themselves, about building your talent pipelines and giving some tips and suggestions, 3 strategies for how they can help to put development plans together and think about who their successors are for their role. Because that's a really big part of the work I do, is helping leaders start to think forward and looking at their team and who needs to be developed. How can you get people ready for other assignments and opportunities? Because that's a big reason why people leave, is they don't feel like there's upward or lateral mobility for them, and to try to do different things, they get overlooked. So I'll share people strategies for that. So
that's
all
awesome.
of those are free, and they're on my LinkedIn.
All of these events, how do we find them? Do we navigate? Do you have a post with the links on them, or can we go to your website? How do we register if we're interested in any of those events?
They're on the Talent Activators business page in LinkedIn.
Okay. So if I scroll down, let me just show you guys how to do this. So if I scroll down to your experience section, and then I click on your Talent Activators page. Yep. And then are they under events?
Yes, they are.
Okay, great. And are these free to attend on?
Yes, okay. Those are. Awesome. I'm doing one that's not in the events page on that page, because I'm doing a paid event that is something different. But these are all the free events that I think relate to the topic we're talking about today.
Awesome. So I'll just I'm going to actually drop this into the chat right now on LinkedIn. So if you're on LinkedIn, you can just click on anything in the chat, and it'll take you right to the pages that I'm showing you and navigating to. But all of these great events are on Dawn's profile, or you could go to her webpage, where if you click into her experience section, that'll take you over to her webpage. That's probably the easiest way to get there. It's called Talent Activator. So awesome, Dawn. Well, this was just such a perfect topic, and I'm so glad this was the first conversation that I had on my LinkedIn Live series this year. It's I call this social media pie. I bring in inspiring people to inform and educate you. And I feel like this was all of the above. It was informational, it was educational, inspirational. This was just a great topic. So thank you, Dawn, so much for sharing your expertise with us today.
Oh, my pleasure, Brendan. Thanks for letting me go first. You're really setting the date with you. Got a lot of other things in motion, including my website getting updated. So
oh, that's right.
I love having deadlines.
Launch your website, or is it launching soon? Or I know you told me about this, but remind me.
It launched before the end of the year, but I put it out on social media on Monday, just because I knew a lot of people weren't on social media over the holidays, which they should not have been. Take a break. So anyway, yes, it just launched, and moved it onto WordPress, and just did some re-imaging and new logo and new branding and new pictures. So
yeah, it's important to do. And having a background in marketing, organizations will update their websites usually 3 to 5 years, and sometimes an overhaul might be at the 5 to 10 year mark, and especially as technologies and things like that change. But when you're self-employed, Dawn, and I totally feel for you on this, you're doing all the work yourself, or you're outsourcing it, and it's costing you money. And then when you get to the point where you're ready to flip the switch, it's like you've been using the old website for such a long time. You've got all these links and things that are out there, and you want to make sure everything is correctly going to be re-navigating to the new path. But once you get it up, you're super excited about it, and you push it out there, and it's like, hey, my new website's up. And it's a big deal to us, because we've been working on it. But most of other people are like, okay, does the link still work? That's all they care about, trying to get in there. But congratulations. I know it's an uphill battle getting a website launched.
Yeah, thank you. No, it was great. I've really enjoyed it. Good process to get your head clear on what you're doing.
Yeah, good. And it was a good kind of time frame, it sounds like, at that year mark too. So thank you. So what's next for you, Dawn? What are you doing after we're done with the interview here today?
I actually have a coaching call to do at the top of the hour. So a new client that's in a new role. So super excited to talk with her, and a couple of other activation conversations that came from getting the website up. So it's moving along really great. I'm excited about 2021, and I hope everybody else is. And I'm here to help. Everybody can connect with me on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. I accept invitations. So many people that I'm seeing in the thread I know, but if I don't know you and you want to reach out, feel free to do so. If I don't have an answer for you, I'm sure I can connect you with somebody else like Brenda. I get a lot of requests about resumes from individuals. I'm not a resume writer, but I know lots of great resume writers. So those kinds of things come up. I've got resources to help people at many stages in their career.
Awesome. And I put Dawn's LinkedIn URL up on screen, and she said, invite her to connect. I always recommend when you invite someone to connect, always add a personal message with it. So it gives you an option. You can either add a note or send now. You always want to click add a note. And then if I were you guys watching the show here today, I would say, hi, Dawn. I watched you on LinkedIn Live with Brenda this morning. I really liked your advice about strategy or planning or whatever, something that you saw her talking about, so she knows you actually watched the show, right? And then let's connect on LinkedIn. So actually tell her, give her some context as to how you know her, how you heard about her, and then ask for the invitation. It's a great way of starting to build dialogue. And then if you're interested in learning more about anything Dawn talked about, you can also continue the conversation there. But visit her profile, definitely look her up, a great resource, some great events that are coming up too, Dawn. So thank you so much for sharing that with all of us today.
Thanks so much, Brenda. It's been a pleasure to be here.
All right. Well, everybody, this has been a great start to the new year. So happy New Year, everyone. We are living in interesting times for certain. 2021 is starting off in a very interesting start here in America. And I am looking forward to a great year ahead. I am hopeful and optimistic. We're going to get out of this pandemic. Life will get back to a normalish mode here, and just focusing on surrounding yourself with positive people like Dawn and finding resources to continue to educate and move yourself forward and help others, I think is such an important thing. So on that note, everybody stay safe and stay healthy. Have a good rest of your week, and join me again next week on LinkedIn Live for additional speakers and topics. Take care, everyone. Have a great week. Thanks again, Dawn. Take care.
Bye. Thanks, Brenda.